Well, thank you for coming. My topic is Documenting Activism, a practical guide for organizers. And when we talk about documenting, we're going to kind of go through a little bit about writing, photography, videography, and using social media to get your message out there. I've given similar talks at in other venues, and I'm really happy to be able to present it during International Week. So I have my notes, as you see on the screen. I've posted my notes at my blog, which is wordspicturesmusic.com, and I have the notes up on the screen too, so you can follow along if you're somebody who absorbs things better by reading than by listening, or would like to take some notes. And I'll be leaving these up on my blog as well, and I'll be adding a video from the presentation as well. Once I have it ready. That's what I've got going on here with my phone. So I've been doing this for about 12 years. I attended my first peace rally in September of 2005, and I asked permission to take photos. I just at the time thought it was an interesting thing to do, and I posted the photos later on. I had a blog, and I posted around whatever passed for social media at the time. I believe I posted them on a listserv, an email listserv. I think some of us here probably remember what those were. They're not used as often as they used to be, but the reaction to them was so huge that the server that I had the photos on actually crashed. And I realized that maybe I was onto something here. Maybe there was a desire and an audience for activist events in Edmonton. Because at that time, nobody was really documenting the local activist scene. And so I got a better website, I got more server space, I started to bone up on my skills in photography and social media, and a short time later, videography. And I mostly document events through photography and video, and I share my work using social media. And of course, writing is part of that as well, and we'll get to some of that later. Now, the first question is like, why document? Why spend the time? Why spend the effort? So the importance of documentation has several facets. First of all, you're capturing history, and perhaps part of Edmonton's history that isn't and has not been widely examined. It keeps a record of what happened, when and why. It creates something tangible that can be shared with others locally and elsewhere, and perhaps helps to form connections between organizations and individuals. And I also view what I do as having an artistic element to it as well, because I view art and activism as being very closely connected, and because both communicate messages in visual ways or physical ways. Also, when you document something visually, unless somebody intentionally sets about using Photoshop or some other program in nefarious ways, what you see is pretty well what happened, is presenting a truth of what happened and a record of what happened. For example, I videoed Jane Fonda's talk last year. She was here in Edmonton during a panel discussion on pipelines. And a number of people expressed their dismay to local media. You know, why is this celebrity coming here and being disrespectful to our oil industry and criticizing what she said? And they weren't at that talk, so I don't know how they were able to criticize what she said when they weren't actually there. I gave them that opportunity to see what exactly she said, because I videoed her whole talk and put it up on YouTube, and anybody can see it anytime they want. So in that way, you can foster discussion. I mean, it's fine to disagree with something as long as you know what it is you're disagreeing with. I use YouTube and Flickr for videos and photos. I also use Facebook for photos, of course, as well. I find these intuitive to use. It makes my work easy to share, because you get a link generated from YouTube when you upload a video. If you upload a photo album on Flickr, same thing. You get a link that you can easily share. And I post my work on Twitter and Facebook mostly. I've also been using Instagram more as time has been going by. Instagram has kind of become, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram has become sort of the triumvirate of social media to use for getting a message out there. I'm going to do questions after. That's okay, because I might hit what it is that you want before then. I find the sharing and retweeting capacities of these platforms to spread my work to a fairly wide number of people in a relatively short period of time. And Instagram is great because you can take a photo and send it out immediately, and you can have, there are share settings in Instagram where it can go to Twitter and Facebook as well automatically. For blogging and simple websites, I like WordPress. This website that you see up here is a WordPress-based site. I started out using Blogger. The logic is very similar, but I've moved more towards WordPress because you can do things, you can make your blog basically into a simple website rather than it just being a blog. So conversations about documentations that I've had over the years, there's conversations about the efficacy of the use of social media when it comes to activism. Yeah, it's a great way to get messages out, but also it's something to be cautious about. For example, you need to protect yourself. There are security issues. Don't accept, any and all friend requests on Facebook. Who are these people? Yet people friending you on Facebook, who are they? Okay, you got like 2 friends in common. Who are those friends? If it's someone you don't know, you're under no obligation to accept all friend requests. Be careful about sharing personal information, and issues of privacy and permission. Now, photographing and videoing people in public places, taking part in public events is generally okay in Canada. The laws are different in Quebec. But there may be times when, even if it's okay, it still would be appropriate to ask permission. Also, photographing the police is fine as long as you're not interfering with their ability to do their work. Again, this might be different in Quebec, and laws can be different in different parts of the world, so don't take what I'm saying here as the gospel. Check it out for yourself before you whip out a camera at a protest if you happen to be overseas somewhere or in a different province, because the last thing you want is to get into legal trouble. And then there's conversations about the subject matter itself, so discussing different sides of the issue, which is what we want to do, foster discussion about issues concerning conflict and human rights. That gets back to what I said before about the Jane Fonda talk. If you're going to disagree, well, know what you're disagreeing with. So some concrete examples of my work and its impact. In June of 2015, Justin Trudeau was in Edmonton. He was not yet Prime Minister. And no, I did not go see him last night, in case you were wondering, to help launch the campaign of Amarjeet Sohi, who was running for MP in Edmonton Mill Woods, and he was subsequently elected. So I'm with the Edmonton Coalition Against War and Racism, and we organized a series of pickets against Bill C-51, which the Liberals voted in favor of. That's an omnibus bill that gives the RCMP and various other government agencies extra power to kind of delve into our lives in ways that we may not want them to. So the Liberals voted for it with a promise to revise the bill if they were elected. We're still waiting for that to happen. Big surprise. So all of the media was inside the banquet hall at the time, except for me, because I was outside filming the protest. I didn't really care what was going on inside the banquet hall. And I heard all this screaming coming from behind me, and I turned around and there was Justin Trudeau standing there arguing with one of the members of ECOWAR. And I got the whole thing on video, and it went viral across the country. I ended up having mainstream media outlets calling me to do interviews with them because I was the one who filmed Justin Trudeau arguing with the protester. So that experience hit home to me, the importance of what I was doing. Nobody else captured the moment, even though it was readily available to be captured. And how a large part of doing what I do is simply just showing up and being in the right place at the right time. Here is a clip of that.
Yes. Yes. I absolutely agree. We need to make sure.
Why did you not vote against the bill?
Because there are elements in that bill that keep Canadians safe in a concrete and serious way. And we need to make sure that we're balancing the rights of Canadians with the protections of Canadians.
How can you balance rights and freedoms without rights being guaranteed? People can have no security.
Actually,
So there's no such thing as balancing rights and freedoms.
Of course there is. Balancing rights and freedoms is what the nature of society is. Balancing it the proper way. Let me give you a concrete example. And I understand your concerns about Mr. Harper, for example, because on the case of Omar Khadr, he has done everything he can to try and keep Omar Khadr behind bars. But Our court system and our Charter of Rights and Freedoms has worked very, very hard to make sure that he's actually protected and has released him on bail. We have a system in our places that works.
You're right, the Liberal
I'm
Party.
not voting against the Charter of Rights. I'm actually... Sorry. The bill...
And on we go, but as you can see, this remains one of my most popular videos to this day. People still comment on it. Another aspect of my work you might be familiar with is I'm a co-organizer of the Women's March on Washington Edmonton Solidarity event that happened on January 21st of last year. And if anything shows the power of social media, it was this. Combined with the international media coverage that the sister marches were getting, with the main march being in Washington, our local event page, Twitter and Instagram went viral. And documenting this was important to us because we knew this was going to be something historic. So when I was out there, I was doing basically triple duty as MC, videographer, and photographer, although we did have an official photographer too. And we saw the numbers on Facebook getting bigger and bigger up until the day itself, when over 4,000 people packed the north side of the legislature ground. I and one of the other co-organizers decided to keep the momentum created by the march. We continue using social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We set up our own website, and we just organized an anniversary event that just happened a couple of weeks ago on January 20th. We got 1,000 people out this time, which is still pretty good in the cold of winter in Edmonton. And we continue to use social media to promote the event, which definitely contributed to its success. And here's a clip from...
that you're writing a really important email.
I was
to a
at the
colleague.
event last year. It was very good.
Thank you, yeah, thank you.
I found out about...
Or a
found
post on
out about
Facebook that all your friends will see.
Thanks. So here's just, I'm trying to capture the magnitude of what happened. That's the Women's Warrior song that you're hearing in the background. And then we had... I've never seen that many people pack the legislature grounds before. One little problem with YouTube is you do have ads, but you are getting a free service, so there is a trade-off there. So moving along to how documentation impacts the community. Well, the way that I do it, I feel gives everyday citizens a voice and a platform that they may not otherwise have had. Mainstream media often doesn't cover progressive and activist events at great length, if at all. I'm putting up entire speeches, or at least more than just 30-second sound bites. So it also impacts the community in that it creates resources for future actions and the ability to start dialogues on the different issues presented. So the practical stuff, why? Document, to have a historical record, to protect yourself and your colleagues by having recorded details that the memory may otherwise lose, to share your movement and experiences online and connect with like-minded groups, individuals, and grow beyond your borders, helping grassroots community build locally and beyond through the sharing of resources, helping to attract others to the movement by presenting who you are and what you do. Pictures and videos speak volumes beyond just written description, but writing is important too. We are still going to get to that. It allows you to be the media and cover important gaps in coverage. Citizen journalism is indeed a thing, and there are unprecedented opportunities in today's world for our voices to be heard. And for yourself, there are just people who just like there are people who just like taking pictures at family gatherings, events, and protests can make important memories for us as well. When it comes to photos and videos, I do admit that there are issues of privilege here and access, because you have to have access to equipment. You need a camera, ideally you need a computer. You don't need a big fancy camera, not anymore anyway, because the way that smartphones and tablets have come in the last few years, you can do some really excellent work with photography and video just with your phone. Most phones also take video. Most cameras, DSLR and point and shoots, can take video. And some video cameras can also take decent stills. So the benefit is that you can share items immediately that you take through data or Wi-Fi. Just be careful if you're on data, don't eat up your data plan. I wouldn't recommend uploading videos on a data plan. You can even edit in your phone or tablet with apps that you can download, most of them being free, or just which come with your operating system. Instagram and Flickr, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all are places you can post to immediately. Tag, add hashtags. Tags are like keywords. Hashtags use the hash symbol and also work as keywords that can be clicked on to be taken to materials using the same term. So for example, if you're using YEG in Twitter for Edmonton related posts, there are some people that have in whatever Twitter client they're using a YEG column, and anything that is hashtagged with YEG comes up in that feed. Photos should tell a story, include backdrops with crowds. Don't always focus on individuals without context, or else you end up with photos that look like they could have been taken anywhere. For example, somebody once sent me photos that were taken at a festival, and the pictures were just of some friends of the person sitting on the grass outside at the festival. I mean, they could have been taken anywhere. The photo had no context. There's no issue in Canada taking photos and videos and posting photos from public gatherings in public spaces. Again, the rules are different in Quebec, but respect it if a colleague doesn't want his or her photo taken and posted. It could be a job-related issue, it could be a family issue, or maybe they just don't like their picture being taken. Legal issues versus moral and ethical issues is what's in this case, and I tend to err on the side of caution. When it comes to photographing children, if children are singled out in a photo, it's always a good idea to get permission from their parents or guardians. Again, morality and ethics should take precedence over legality. In Canada, police and law enforcement can be photographed. They nor anyone else have the right to tell you to delete photos. Just don't get in the way of them doing their job. Again, there's some differences in Quebec, and check the rules of where you are if you're traveling to document something. As I've said before, though, I'm not a lawyer, so my information comes from my experience. But don't take this as legal advice. Always do your research first. When it comes to editing, I try to shoot in a way that requires minimal editing, if at all. Sometimes I'll do a tiny bit of color correction, sometimes I'll do a little bit of cropping, but documentation to me means being true to what I see, so I don't want to change or enhance it much. You can crop and make some adjustments right in your phone, and most computer operating systems come with a basic photo editor as well as a video editor. Now, on to writing. So writing can also capture moments by describing them, and is another way of sharing information. Photo captions and descriptions is another way of doing this as well. You can have a blog where you can write things as well as post your photos and videos using WordPress or Blogger. If you just want a plain blog, Blogger might be more intuitive for some, but again, I prefer WordPress. For Facebook posts, keep them succinct and add hashtags. You don't have to be an English major or a wonderful writer, just be descriptive, be succinct. You can also choose to write letters to the editor at newspapers, but don't be surprised if you don't get published or it gets edited way, way down. The best way I find to get published as a letter to the editor is to keep it as short as possible. Contribute to activist websites. They're usually hungry for submissions because most of them don't pay, and they're not as fussy about your ability as a writer. You can work as a team, have someone edit your work, especially if you have concerns about your grammar or your spelling or anything like that. Be careful what you write. There's a saying we have in the social media world: say it and forget it, write it and regret it. Because nothing ever really permanently vanishes from the internet. Some of you might remember Deborah Drever, who was elected in 2005 as a Calgary MP with the NDP, and then had to sit as an independent for a while because some of her social media past came back to haunt her. You don't want something coming back at you down the road, so be careful. Published work online usually has a unique link that can be shared on social media, so individual blog posts, you can post those on your Twitter and on your Facebook and drive work to your website and to your blog. Some best practices for photos, which also could be apply to video. Some of these things seem like common sense, but they're things that people just forget so often. Make sure that your batteries are charged in your phone and your cameras. Carry a charger and battery packs for your phones. I find that the battery, if I'm using my phone as a camera, the battery in it goes down really, really fast. Some camera batteries are proprietary, so if it's economical for you, try to have a spare and make sure that it's also charged up in advance. For Instagram, make sure that you have good descriptions. You don't have, the character limit in Instagram is around 2,000, so you have the opportunity to write really good descriptions, use lots of hashtags, and you can set your sharing settings for Facebook and Twitter. But whenever possible, try to post separately on Twitter, because when you auto-send from Instagram, the photo doesn't automatically appear in the tweet, it appears as a link. And so the user on Twitter then has to click through on a link to get to the photo. And some people do that and some people aren't going to bother. So if you have time, try to post your photos on Twitter as well separately. On Facebook for photos, don't tag people who are not in photos. This is a pet peeve of many people and a really good way to get defriended. I hate it when somebody, I get a notification, someone tagged you in a photo on Facebook. Oh, cool, what is it? And there's something that has like, it's an ad of some kind, or it's a notification of an event or something. And I mean, yeah, it's a good way to get people's attention, but it also is annoying. And respect it when people don't want to be tagged. And it's easier now that people can remove tags themselves if they don't want to be tagged. But again, like the same way that some people don't want their photo taken, they don't want to be tagged in photos because they don't want to be easily identified. On Flickr, same with the above, descriptions, keywords, share, you can add people. It has its own sort of tagging function if the person is also on Flickr. For writing and blogging, use lots of keywords, have someone edit your work, fact check, and be sure to share links to your work on social media. So this is a very, very fast whirlwind overview to social media and documenting online for activism. And I'm just trying to get it back to trying to find where the cursor is here. Oh, okay. And I'm gonna now, in the time that we have remaining, does anyone have any questions or things they'd like to discuss? I know you had your hand up earlier. Yeah.
It was about the technology part.
Uh-huh.
Flickr versus Instagram, pros and cons.
More people are on Instagram now. Instagram is more instant. Flickr is better if you want to post complete albums of your work from a specific event. It's more of an archiving and storage type thing, whereas Instagram is more of it's like Twitter with photos. It's like the Twitter of photos almost. It's more of a stream of photos blog, and it's Facebook actually owns Instagram, in case you didn't know that, or they did anyway, and it's a similar kind of thing where you have friends on Instagram, and there's a news feed where you're getting everybody's most recent photos, and then there's your page with all of your photos up there, and you can like and you can comment, and it's a little bit more interactive in that way. If you're somebody who is really into photography and you take a lot of photos and you go to a lot of events, I recommend Flickr as a way of having your work online and having a really good way of organizing it into albums in a way that it's easily accessible.
It's really helpful, yeah. I've used albums on Facebook to try to organize photos.
The albums on Facebook are more for sharing with your friends on Facebook. They don't work as well if in the archiving way of things, because just the way that the albums are, I find that the way they're organized in the photo section of your page, they're not as easy to go through. They're not as easy to, if you're looking for something specific, it's not as easy to find.
Can you share from Flickr onto Facebook? Or do you do that?
Yeah, there is a share setting from Flickr to Facebook. I turned it off because I was finding that when I had it on and then I would upload a bunch of photos to Flickr because there's a mass upload tool, like they start coming through one by one into the Facebook feed and kind of messing things up a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
Good to know, thank you.
yeah. Yes.
I have a question in terms of the logistics of documenting people. So once you take a picture, a video, right? Do you have to go about getting their consent to put it online? And if so, like, is it a form or is it on video? How do you do that?
If you feel more comfortable getting someone to sign a release after you've taken their photo before you post it, there are examples online of photo release forms. The general rule of thumb, as I've mentioned, is that if it's a person in a public space at a public event, there's nothing that prevents you from taking their picture and posting it online. But like I said, there are times when you might want to use your discretion about that. If someone is really, really singled out, or if you have any concern at all that posting a photo might cause a problem for them, then by all means talk to the person. And again, and in Quebec, like I said, it's different. It could be different in other parts of the world too. So I always say err on the side of caution if you're not sure what to do. Yeah.
About blogs, Blogger versus WordPress. You mentioned you started in Blogger, then moved to WordPress. Can you talk a bit about what's better about WordPress for you?
I found WordPress started to become kind of the industry standard for interactive, user-friendly, content-managed websites. And this happened while I was still using Blogger, so I started to check out WordPress because part of what I do for work is also I do website content for organizations and people, and I do websites, and I looked into it, and I found it to be very intuitive. You create a website where you can log into a back end, and there's a content management system that's basically like a word processor where you don't have to know any or much coding at all, and anyone can learn there's a bit of a learning curve, but it's easier to learn how to upload and make pages, and you still have your blog attached to it, but the blog is just one part of it. You can have my website here is a full-fledged website with my bio and my list of things I've written and samples of my photography and pages just like a full-fledged website. And there are other interfaces that are getting to be more common as well. There's something called Squarespace that's getting to be more common, especially with people who do podcasting or art, things like that. But WordPress, I still find, is most commonly used.
Would you post that on a thing like Wix.com or?
Wix, I think, is its own thing as well. With WordPress, you can either just sign up through WordPress itself for a free space up to a certain amount. You pay for the domain, and it's like $25 a year or something. You get like the domain, and you get like an ad. You notice there's like an ad on the side there. But again, you're getting a very low cost hosting solution. They have premium packages as well, where you pay more, you get more space, you get access to tools that you can like bake an interactive calendar into the website, things like that. You don't get the ads, but it costs more. And then if you have a hosting plan through whatever company you choose, most of them now have a WordPress interface. You can install, you get your domain through your host, and you can install WordPress on your hosting package and build your site like that. So there are different options depending on how much time and money you have available to put into it. You're welcome. Yeah.
So I was just going through your channel, and I see you have a lot of events that you've covered. So I was just wondering, do you use like a specific app to know what's going on where, or are you just online?
No, it's just through, so what I have, where I put most of my blog, where I host my work, is called radicalcitizenmedia.com. I so wish I had thought of Rebel way back when I started. But I'm like, darn, oh man. So in my blog, it's just the latest update. What's the last thing that I documented? So in this case, it was the January 20th anniversary march. And then I have, this is also WordPress. I have a page set up for every like type of thing I cover. So if you're looking at something for labor, you go into here. I have May Day as a separate page because it's very specific, but then these are in reverse chronological order, the different labor type rallies I've been to, which I also have tagged as each time I post a latest update, I also tag it by category, which is another way of finding something. And I also have a search function, so if somebody's looking for Pride parades or something, they can type that in, and then every time Pride parade is mentioned somewhere, they can find it. I have my social media share buttons. This is a tool that WordPress has where you can just link all of your social media together from your website. I have a PayPal donate for people who are helping support my work. And yeah, but the way that I find, it's basically just been word of mouth and Facebook and events and people inviting me to things. Any other questions? Yeah.
About video, can you recommend small handheld cameras?
I've always used Canon. I shoot, my DSLR is Nikon, and I also do video with it as well. And I find it's good. I find Nikons are a lower price point for DSLRs than Canons, although like people who are real camera enthusiasts, a lot of them swear by Canon. But all of my cameras other than my DSLR, they are Canon. So I have a couple of little point and shoots that take really good pictures and decent video. Those are Canons. And then my big like professional video camera is a Canon Vixia HF G10, which is about 4 or 5 years old at this point. But the Vixia series of Canon, there's all different price range. They start from about 200 up. I found them to be really good. The one thing I would recommend if you do get a handheld video camera is to get an external microphone, because I found that the internal microphones on them are not very powerful. They're a bit distorted. It's just, if you want to take your work to another level, get an external mic to go with it.
Would you recommend that for if you're doing like interviews?
Especially if you're doing interviews, because you want to be able to hear what people are, very clearly what people are saying. You want to get a directional microphone as well, so that if there's noise going on in other parts of where you're filming, you're focusing on what is facing the microphone as well. If you're just using the camera microphone, then you're going to be getting all kinds of ambient noise in there as well.
Can I ask you a follow-up
Sure,
question?
yep.
What is DSLR?
DSLR, digital single lens reflex. So that's the kind of camera that has interchangeable lenses as opposed to a point and shoot.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kind of a follow-up to the video.
Yeah,
thing.
sure. Yeah.
So, what do you use an editing software? And,
Oh yeah. Do you mean for video?
For
For video, I just use iMovie, which comes with the Mac operating system. I find that it's very intuitive to use, and it has enough power to do whatever it is I need to do. I've done professional editing using it as well. Yes.
I'm just wondering, because when you were talking about if you encounter police,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm wondering, have you ever had a moment where the police were like, stop filming this, or, because I guess my mind is going to, in particular, Toronto's G20, and there was a lot of protests going on, and a lot of it was captured, but a lot of confrontations with
Right.
particular event.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering from your own personal experience on that.
I've never experienced that personally. If I did, something I might do is just kind of put the camera down and then back away a little bit. I try to avoid confrontation as much as possible. Whether or not they have the right to, a police officer can still tell you to put the camera down or erase what you're doing, stop what you're doing, whatever. So you kind of have to evaluate the situation that you're in. Yeah, it can get really tricky sometimes. Yeah.
So I'm wondering about like the tension of a march, or a tension, like, the different situations that can occur.
Yeah.
And I guess you just have to be in tune with your intuition of evaluating what's going on. Is there safety a concern? Should I be like, okay, I need to step away?
Yeah, you need to be aware. Definitely, you need to be aware of your surroundings and, to know what's going on around you. I often say that when I'm at a march or a rally, I'm not in it. I'm on the side filming. I'm slightly apart, so I have to check around just for safety issues and to make sure that I'm not putting myself into some kind of a dangerous situation where I'm isolated. Welcome.
I also have a question about, again, this topic.
Yeah.
Like, how do you separate your feelings from what you're photographing or taking video of? Because sometimes it might be like a very unfair situation, and you sound like somehow you would feel frustrated that this is happening, but at the same time you're filming it, and I don't know, like this has been always a question in my mind.
Yeah, and it's a really good point. And it's something, as a journalist, and I do come from a journalism background, that you have to learn over time, is to sort of separate yourself from the context of what you're doing and view that, okay, if something is unfair that's going on and I'm not happy with it, well, I'm filming it. So there's a record of it. You're making a record of it, and that could be your contribution to the situation. So to look at it that way, I have I know someone who was filming at an event, and people were yelling "F the police," and he was not comfortable with that. And instead of just going along with whatever, he kind of injected himself into the situation, and it cost him a lot of credibility as a documentator, and also with some people in the activist community because of that. I said, well, people are doing that, you can't stop them. You don't necessarily have to put that into your final product if you're not comfortable with that kind of language. But I when I come to something, I'm there as an activist, I'm there as a media activist, but I'm also there as a journalist. So sometimes I have to separate my feelings from what's going on. My editorial, so to speak, is what I choose to show up to. So I choose to come to events that deal with environmental justice and peace and women's rights, and not ones that deal with promoting Islamophobia or that are against women's reproductive rights or things like that. That's how I inject myself into my work. That's how I make a personal statement, is through what I choose to document. People say that I'm biased, but I say, no, that's not biased. I'm doing this as an individual citizen, and I am making that choice of what I want to document and what I want to put out to the world. So, yes.
On that line, these people that say you're biased, I'm just curious what they would say you would have to do to be unbiased.
Well, who doesn't have bias, right?
Yeah.
We all have bias.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as no bias. To me, that's just it's a straw. The whole thing about bias to me is just a straw man argument.
Yeah. It's kind of like that, disagreeing with something without understanding.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, sure.
Sorry.
Hey, no problem.
I don't want to dominate things.
No worries.
Questions. Do you have any any suggestions for doing interviews? considering I'm thinking about starting up a blog.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm interested in, it's not really activism, but I want to interview people with good character.
Okay.
Put that out there, because I don't think that there's, way too much about people with very poor character.
Right.
And people with good character are
Right.
getting off in the corner.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about interviewing them. Should I record a video, audio?
Well, it depends what you want to do. If you want to do an audio podcast, then you would be doing audio. If you want to do it as like an online TV show type of thing, you want to do it as a video.
Yeah.
Just kind of depends how you want to do that. I had a television program for 3 years on Shaw TV. It was called From the Ground Up, and it was basically the same things that I video for YouTube, repackaged for television, and I would include as part of that interviews with some of the organizers. And the best advice I would give about the actual active interviewing would be to know your subject and to know what questions to ask in advance, especially if you're doing the kind of an interview that's going to be recorded and put out there, whether it's video or audio. You want to be prepared, know the subject matter, know who it is who you're interviewing, do a little bit of research beforehand if you have to. Yeah. There's 5 minutes left. Are there any final questions, or we can wrap it up? Yeah. Well, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. And like I said, you can go to my blog to get these notes at wordspicturesmusic.com, and I'll be adding the video from this in the next few days. And if you ever have any questions or anything about this, please feel free to get in touch with me. You can do that through my online media. I'm not hard to find. And yeah, thank you for coming in.